No, there's no sign-in sheet or anything. There are some comment cards in the back, and there's a box by the door, so if you have any things you need us to take, yeah, feel free, that's absolutely.
Last time I saw you was the
Appreciate everybody coming. Yeah, if you're just walking in, there's some food on the in the back there on the right. You'll see it kind of stacked up in the boxes there. Feel free to help yourself to it. Um, Cortland, as you see people kind of popping in, can you just kind of help them out and just let them know it's back there? I'm sure we'll have a few folks that'll straggle in. We usually do. So before we get started, my name's Scott Lee. I'm a police captain with Daytona Beach Police Department. I have a division that's assigned to me called Neighborhood Services. That division is a hybrid division comprised of both law enforcement and civilians. The law enforcement portion of that is our problem ordinance policing unit, which we'll talk about at the end of the presentation, very short part of the presentation at the end. But the main part of my division is the code enforcement division and the rental team. And that's what we're really here to talk about tonight. And we're going to go over this is our year-end review. Usually in January, we go back and look at the previous year's numbers and see what the data looks like. Really, this is the tail end of the exercise of looking at the data. We're presenting it to you as part of the process of being transparent with the public and letting you see the data and letting you ask questions about the data or ask questions about anything you'd like to ask, because that's also part of this process, is just to have a conversation. If there's something to be talked about, we like to have those conversations with the public. But before we even get here, there's a process where we go through and we look through the data, make sure that things have been categorized correctly, review cases, look for trends within the data, and identify things that we need to work on with the inspectors. And that's done routinely throughout the year. It happens every month, and then it happens at the quarterly time frames when we run our code stat meetings, and then it happens again here at the end of the year. So those are all going on in the background, and this is just kind of the public presentation portion that you see. The folks that are sitting up here with me, on my right here is Denzel Sykes. He's the manager that oversees our code enforcement and our rental team. And then over here on the left, I have Mark Jones. He's the supervisor that supervises our code enforcement team. That's comprised of 10 inspectors that are assigned to various areas throughout the city. One of them is assigned to the entire city because he has all vacant lots in the entire city. And then June Barnes is just to the left of Mark over there. And June is the supervisor for our rental program. So she oversees 3 of our rental inspectors. One of them works short-term rentals. He's actually here with us today. Cliff Reckenzone's right there. And then her other 2 rental inspectors work long-term rentals. And she'll talk about her program towards getting a little on towards the end of the program as well. So we're just going to start, and we'll go through, and we'll just kind of each have a little part of the presentation. And there are parts during the presentation when we kind of stop and let you guys ask questions about those areas of the city. We just try to reserve that time for when you ask the questions, just to kind of keep the flow of the presentation going. I would like to say that usually I have an administrative assistant that helps me with this presentation, and I haven't because she had been out on maternity leave for a while, and then just recently decided that she was going to spend more time with her new baby and resigned. So she wasn't here to help on the last one or this one. So Mark and June had to jump in and help me clean up the data, a lot of cleaning up of the data, because we switched a lot of things in the computer system this last quarter. And they really have supported trying to get this presentation done and helped out tremendously. Our other support folks are in the back. Xavier, he's back there. He's setting up the live stream, helping us get this out to everybody else who's not physically here with us today. And he also takes care of all the IT hookups. Xavier and Joe Graves. Joe's not here today with us. He's at another meeting. but they're also the folks that help us with all our IT setup during our code board and magistrate meetings. So they work with us multiple times throughout the month. They're great partners. We appreciate their hard work. Today with us, we have Ken Strickland, Zone 2 Commissioner, so I appreciate you being here, sir. Thank you very much. And I think and we have Cortland is our code liaison officer. He's the one in the yellow jacket in the back. He's the one that sets up the whole room. He gets the food together. That's the most important part. That's what makes everybody happy. Yeah. So thank you guys.
Here that's a homeowner.
Yeah. Yeah, we have there's a light turnout today. Like I said before, I think because of the cold weather and everything else going on, people have chose to watch from home. So I introduced Denzel Sykes. We don't need to go over his credentials.
You guys could have done this in the office.
Yeah, we probably could have. So we'll move on to open cases for the year during 2020 or 2021. Sorry. The entire neighborhood service, that includes the rental team and the code enforcement team, they opened 59 cases. And you can see in the pie chart here, it gives you a breakdown of the percentage of those cases. What stands out in this chart is that 57% of the cases are residential property. That's not really surprising. Majority of our properties in our city are residential, and that is where we focus. That's what we are. We work in our neighborhoods to keep the property values up and keep our properties in good condition and our neighborhoods in good condition. Yes, sir. We don't divide out whether they're homesteaded or not homesteaded. So you could have a residential property that's listed in that category that might not be homesteaded.
They'll be up there 11%.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the question was there. I mean, there's in that 57%, it's possible that properties would be non-homesteaded. And there's also, that's okay, Xavier, because we're going to do questions at the end of each section. Yeah, that's okay. No, it's all right. It's the possibility for a residential property to be homesteaded or not homesteaded exists within that 57%. Because somebody can own a second home and have it, it would still be a residential property. It's used as a residential property. This is defined by its use. Does that make sense? Moving on to the next slide, this is open cases this is the same number of open cases it's just showing what level of proactivity we have. So the first number, which is 1,426, is the complaint-driven cases. Those are ones that people called in and made a complaint or sent an email in. Somehow a complaint came into us. And the second number, which is 2,433, those are the number of complaints that our inspectors observed. Or in some cases, law enforcement may have observed them and summoned code enforcement there to assist them. The breakdown turns out to be 63% to 37%. This is pretty consistent. We usually are right around the 60% proactive, 40% complaint-driven mark, probably for the last at least 3 years or so. On the next slide, we'll be looking at the cases opened per month. Now, you'll see 3 lines on this slide. The main line that you're looking at is the yellow line. That's the 2021 line. And part of what we worked on this year was really stability within the program. And you'll see that line actually leveled out for us. In the previous years, we would, based on how we were working with the inspectors and things that we were addressing within the programs, you would see these spikes both in the cases that would open and then they would taper off real quickly after that. And then you'll see this also in when we look at closed cases as well. And what we were looking for is just teaching the inspectors to have more of a moderate, consistent level of work instead of having to rush out and try to do work because the community or bosses were demanding this work, to say, hey, let's work consistently and a consistent flow all of the time at a moderate pace that keeps us moving along and getting things done. without overstressing the system in the process.
This is of the 11 inspectors.
These numbers right here are for,
The 11 inspectors.
these are for the entire program. This would be for the 10 inspectors plus it's 13 inspectors.
13, okay.
Yeah. These are not inspections, these are cases. Each case has multiple inspections within it. They can have numerous inspections within it. The red line is for 2020, and the darker line, I think it's like a gray, is for 2019.
The spike in 2020, is that when you guys got aggressive about condemning and knocking stuff down?
No, our
in 30
program,
days?
our program doesn't have anything to do with the condemnation program, so we don't document the condemnation cases within our program. That spike really has to do with those two individuals over there, and they actually got an award for this. But they found a creative way to discover unlicensed rentals that were operating in the city, and they discovered, they used a process of working with the property appraiser's office to be able to identify them. Very similar to what you were talking about, looking at homestead and stuff like that, and identified like 400 in a month, which is a huge number of rentals in 1 month.
Impressive. But back in maybe early 20, story on how Daytona was getting very aggressive. They were knocking down 30, you had what, 30 days? When you could knock it down?
Yeah, you're talking about a process that the building department goes through. It's called our condemnation process. When a building's condemned, you have 20 days to respond and appeal that condemnation. That's what you're referring to. And there was a period of time where they were pretty aggressive. There was a large amount of money that was pooled into a fund to be able to address numerous blighted properties throughout the city. We work with the building department on those. We have cases that are mixed in here that are related to those same properties, but we are not part of those that condemnation process. Our process runs independent of that. If we're moving on to, I'm sorry, we were on closed cases by month, and you'll see that the line, it still has its ups and downs, and it spikes a little bit in yellow, on the yellow line. That's mainly because as part of our monthly and quarterly process, we are driving that, hey, your cases are open, they've been lingering. Why is this case just sitting unaddressed? We need to move it forward or explain why there's a reason. Because there are reasons sometimes that cases have to be delayed, but most often they just kind of get lost in the shuffle if they're getting delayed, and as supervisors, we push those back on track. Next slide is cases closed during 2021. The neighborhood services team closed 3,956 cases during 2021. And you can see the largest number closed in compliance. The cases, did it again too. Actually, yeah, okay, perfect. That's the slide you were supposed to go to. Yeah, so I'll give you the numbers just so you know. The compliance number is 2,862. Unfounded, which is the next biggest category, is 584. Liens is 281. Compliance after finding is 130, and then the numbers get pretty small from there. But you can see on this pie chart that that compliance is the biggest piece of the pie, and that's because the goal of the program is to get people into compliance. The purpose of our program isn't to impose fines against people. It's not to cause damage to people or to hurt people in any way. It's to use our process in a way that steadily and relentlessly communicates with them in a way that gets them to proceed forward with fixing the issue. And you know, when we look at this, the pie supports that we're working towards that goal of getting compliance. I will say that we do have an error on this slide that the total number of cases is listed as one. That is an error. We talked about the total on the previous slide, which was, I can't remember now, three. Thank you.
And what's the average number of days? Exactly, thank you, Steve. What's the average number of days from when you get a complaint or you drive by and notice it, whether it's mildew on a wall, it's not right, or the windows aren't, whatever the case may be, or garbage thrown out from the property? Day one and finish, what's the average number of days or a complaint? I mean,
We don't,
what do you-
we don't
what's
have the
target?
ability,
Are
we don't have
you
the,
for 30 days, 60 days?
so I can answer some of that. Just what you said at the end, a target is what I can give you. So we don't have an ability, or we don't track it in a way that tells you what the average day is, start to finish. Mainly because every case is different, every circumstance from each individual is different. And the properties are different. But I can tell you that basically what our expectation is and what we push down to our inspectors is that when a complaint comes in, it is placed in a status called complaint assigned. That's usually when the person on the phone takes the complaint, they log it into the system, and they put it in the status as complaint assigned. It is supposed to be, that inspector is supposed to take it from the complaint assigned status and move it to the investigation started status and start their investigation within the first 5 to 7 days minimum. And they are supposed to have the first notice out the door within the first 15 to 20 days. Okay? That means they've been to the property, they inspected, they gathered all their evidence, took photos, they've researched what violations they need to put into the notice, they put all of those violations into the notice, they've issued the notice and mailed it all out appropriately. Now, I can tell you in some cases, it's much faster than that. And I can tell you in other cases that sometimes it gets delayed longer than that. Well, we'll get the address and we'll look it up for you. I can't.
It got solved, and the closing is tomorrow.
Yeah, I can't tell you, but I can't tell you why it got delayed without looking it up, because
And then what is,
some of the confusion often is too that people think that if they report something to code that it's all of a sudden going to disappear, the problem's going to go away, and that's not what happens, you know.
but there's also let's see, somebody breaks the code. They get issued violation,
Mm-hmm.
and the property gets sold. Then 3 months, 4 months, 6 months pass. And then we have to send another one to the new owner, and the process starts all over again.
Yeah, we've been working.
It takes a year.
So it doesn't have to be that way, and we've been working very diligently over the last year to work with our inspectors so that it doesn't happen that way anymore. And sir, I'll give you my contact information, and if there's a problem with a specific case, as the few people in this room that are here will tell you, you can call me and we will look into it and we will take care of the problem. But the bottom line is that it depends on where you are at the case as to whether the case stops, number one. Because if you're already in front of the code board or the magistrate and you already have a finding of noncompliance, even if it sells, that old owner is still on the hook for the problem, and the new owner is getting added to that case, and the case is proceeding forward. If the person is not on, if the new owner buys it before you're before the code board or magistrate, then yes, we do issue a new notice to the new owner and give them time to remedy because they just bought the property. So it would be the reasonable thing would be to give them, and the law requires us to give them a reasonable amount of time to resolve and remedy the issue. And you know that just goes back to what we talk about targets. That's why we're routinely looking at these cases every month and every quarter, because the supervisors are monitoring because this year we have been training our inspectors to bring their caseloads to where they're working their cases in what we call as close to a 90-day cycle as possible. Because before, we were finding that cases were going on for like ever, and they don't need to. What they needed to, and in some cases they did need to, but those were usually the rare ones. And more importantly, if they needed to go on for longer periods of time, supervisors needed to be aware, so that when people brought up questions like this, we could communicate with the public about why. And I think Manager Sykes wanted to say something. Did I cover was it the meeting thing, the code board and magistrate thing?
Some closure. Some sort of closure.
Yeah, I can look up whatever the property is and answer any questions about it and walk you through. I've done that for folks before, and it does help. And sometimes we've discovered problems and we've had to go fix them, and that's okay. We'll fix what we need to fix. Yeah. I'm going to turn it over to Inspector Supervisor Mark Jones. You're going first? Is that okay? Just making sure. No, he said that I covered it accidentally.
So you want to hear me talk? So basically what I was going to say, which the captain already stated it, sometimes a case goes before either the special magistrate or the code board, and we find out that it's been sold, and the previous owner tries to get out of it, but we still hold them accountable for the violations that they incurred while they own the property, and we also add the new owners onto it. So that way, as we are making the new owners aware, we're still holding the current owners responsible. So we don't have to start the case over, and it can continue on its path to compliance.
And that's still within a 90-day.
Well, for us, I can't tell you that, because for us, what happens, we are taken into code board, and depending on, each case is its own case. So depending on the testimony of the respondent and how the code board or special magistrate receives it, depends on if they give them time. So once we take it there, we can recommend a time frame, but ultimately it's going to be the response from the code board or the special magistrate as to how much time they're going to receive.
I'm aware of people dying and probate and transfers, and you guys can't track it down because it's in probate, it's changed hands a couple times, and we're trying to get to the rightful owner, and I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
My God, man, I've seen in Southern Peninsula Historic District, I've seen a little bit of some projects taking way too long.
Right. Yeah.
Go.
Yeah, I understand. Well, like I said, once.
I'm aware of Boston, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I will say that one of the things that we've also added to the program this year that I think we're really gonna start seeing the benefits probably about halfway through this year, is that we added an extra code in our statuses, and you saw it on that last slide. It's called compliance after finding. Previous, we weren't really tracking when you were found in compliance after you got a finding by a code board or magistrate. And why that's important is because if you come into compliance after you've got that finding, it means basically that you were formally told that this was a violation and that you were in non-compliance of that. And if you repeat that violation after that, it is what the law considers a repeat violation, which means you can be brought back before the magistrate or the code board for a hearing immediately without additional notice time or given time to remedy, and there's an enhanced penalty for that. So the reason why we broke that out into a different category for status, so that the inspectors could identify those cases quicker and easier, so that they could start bringing cases that would repeat, for example, which I know is not exactly the scenario you're bringing up, but it's another way that we're trying to improve the process to be able to improve those timelines, because the hope is that some cases just won't have to sit there for the first 30 to 60 days, where we're waiting for mail to get out to people because it's a repeat violation. Hey, we sent you the letter. We said that we saw the violation again. We're taking you to code board. Expect to see a hearing notice next month when the hearing notice comes out.
house is in disarray, garbage everywhere, all right? The roofs are glued. Okay. What's the first thing you slap on? A fine or hey, come, a notice?
Right, yeah, we document our observations, gather our evidence, and then we mail a notice. Yeah. And if and when that notice goes out, it has to go out certified mail. If they don't sign for it, it gets returned to us, and then at that point, we have to then go out and post the property, and then we have to post one at City Hall and send it first-class mail. Stop me, guys, if I'm missing one. But that's part of what delays the process is that, and there's a lot of people that play that game where they don't sign for notices, and it delays the process and extends it out another 30 days. And we worked with the inspectors on this stuff too, about looking up the receipts for the notice rather than waiting for the card to come back, because that speeds up the process. So we bought them all scanners, so they scan the cards now, so the number sequence goes right into the system, instead of them having to type the numbers in, because sometimes they'd mix some of the numbers up when they were doing it by hand, or they just wouldn't type them in because they'd have too many cases and they'd be moving too fast. So we just bought them a scanner so they could just scan the barcode.
I used to live in Broward County, in South Florida. If I was out of license plate or the grass was too high, there was no waiting around, there was no, hey, here you go, hey, here's a notice. It was 135.
Yeah, what you're referring to as citation process, we're looking at that for something else, but those would be probably something we look at for like special event violations. It's not something that we've looked at for these types of violations. It's just not something that seems necessary for here right now. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. Again, my name is Mark Jones.
You told me you have to hold the mic this way?
Xavier, step back out for a second. Oh, there he is. Mark, did you just want to go up I guess we need to wait for a second. So
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, we got it. I think there we go. Oh, no, keep going. Back.
Back?
Yeah, you need to go backwards.
It's kind of.
Yeah, I think it's probably catching up for all the times you pushed it before. There we go.
Okay, during 2021, the code enforcement team, we opened 3,409 cases, and 64% of those were residential, 25% was commercial, and we had 10% that was vacant lots. This is just a graph that shows that.
You bump back to that one. So this is commercial property subtypes. So this is just commercial properties. And this is, by the way, when Mark's talking about his team here, he's just talking about his code enforcement teams. This doesn't include our rental numbers or anything like that. So this is just commercial properties. You see the highest category is building maintenance exterior structures with 300 of our, out of all the commercial property cases, there's 300 of them for exterior structure. You got another 250 of them which are for exterior property, which is everything that would really happen outside of the building, but on the outside, meaning like trash and debris. Sometimes that's outside storage. Sometimes that's vehicles that might be out there, any of that stuff. So life safety issue is anything that we think warrants something that is like a more emergent concern. Yeah, like something that, it could be as simple as smoke detectors not existing in a home, but it could also, but usually in these, it's like something like a dangerous pool or a dangerous structure itself, or I think most of these are actually electrical hazards.
Yes, most of
Yeah.
them are electrical hazards. You sometimes will have a stairwell or something on a commercial property that needs to be, that we consider a life safety issue. And this is residential. Again, the majority of the cases are the building maintenance for the structure. Property maintenance, which is what we were referring to, was the exterior of the property. That was 668, with the buildings themselves at 668 with, excuse me, and the property 661. Followed by, in the residential side, the next largest number were vehicles. This would be vehicles parking in the yards, not parking on their driveway. So this would be in the front yard or on the side yard. Yes, that would. Correct, that could be residential. They're trying to do automotive repair or something like that outside without having, could be a hair salon and they don't have a business license. Items like that.
Sam, you're very experienced in a very long time. How would you, right now, to where we are, compared to, let's say, 4 or 5 years ago?
Challenge is, I think we're being more observant. We've got the inspectors out there really working the property, so I don't know that you can say what it was 5 years ago. What we're doing is showing you what we're doing this past year and what we're doing when you look at residential properties that we have gotten with property owners on, 668 of the properties that just have building violations to them. Yes, that would be, a violation would be like the roof, soffit, fascia, could be address numbers, could be paint, your paint is peeling, those would be, what? Yes, if you have it, the property, the building would need to be cleaned, yes.
Yeah.
That would be your sidewalks, landscaping, that would all fall under the property maintenance exterior property. That would be if your sidewalks, yards are not being cut.
So, well, that doesn't change the fact that, first off, like, I guess whether your property's homesteaded or whether you're live at a certain means doesn't change the fact that you don't get to circumvent certain laws because of that. So, the law still applies, so the violation still applies. So what we do is that if the inspector informs us of a circumstance like that, or what we tell our inspectors is if you know of a circumstance like that, engage your supervisor and let them know about that. And we have community resources that we attempt to try to communicate with, which are really just volunteers. Ted's not here tonight because we usually have this meeting over at Our Lady of Lourdes, and he helps us set up over there. But Ted is one of those folks that has helped us on several properties doing things just like what you're talking about. He would typically go pressure wash somebody's house or clean their driveway if they were unable to do it themselves and couldn't afford to pay somebody to do it. And that's how we would do it. We would connect Ted to that person and let them work it out. There are programs in the city, depending on, sometimes, I mean, the qualifications are different for each of it. A lot of it's based on income, but also it's based on location. And there are grants that sometimes become available. Right now, I know that we're working on trying to develop a program that would be more citywide, that would assist folks with those types of things as well. No, the location ones are based on zoning. They're based on like redevelopment areas and things like that, because the money is coming from a pool of money that's from that area. Yeah, so I can't tell you what, that's a totally another department, community development, that would be able to tell you all the programs. So I just try to give you a broad answer as I could about what's available.
Their insurance has gone up double. I can tell you that. I own quite a bit of property, and I know what mine has gone up. Compared to the labor, what was spent.
So,
How do we handle this homestead properties that are here, that have these kind of issues?
sir, so first off, homesteaded properties already have additional protections in them. Secondly, I just told you what we do, okay? And again, I'll point you back to my perfect example, because Ted works with a veterans group, for your example, who love nothing more than to identify veterans that need assistance and provide them assistance. So, this is an example where we try to partner with the community, because assisting people within the community is really more of a community thing. The city can't be the enforcement mechanism and the savior all in the same time. So, we can try to build programs that assist and provide, and that's what I also told you we're doing. We're working on trying to identify funding and trying to build programs that could offer assistance citywide, because we do agree with you that there are people that need assistance that would be outside of like the redevelopment area, for example. And they might not have the same access to those types of grants that people who live in a redevelopment area might have access to. And, but at the same time, that just because those things are being worked on or need to be worked on does not mean that we should or have to stop our enforcement process. We have an obligation to the whole as a city to continue to keep the value of the property at least where it is, if not going up. In the sense, and we need to continue to maintain what we have and improve what we have.
Code enforcement doesn't have the programs. Now, there may be a program within the city, community development, redevelopment areas. So whoever's looking for that may be able to reach out to that particular department. But I mean, no, the inspectors know, and yeah, they are informed. And like the Captain Lee said, a lot of times some of the inspectors will come back and say, hey, I have a situation at this property, and we'll point them, we'll give them direction on which department that needs to be contacted for possible assistance. Okay? Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, just to follow up with that, the inspectors will often call these other departments on behalf of other people and inquire about other things. So we're engaged in this, and just because we can't sit here and tell you all the nuanced parts of these programs, that's only because we know the nuanced parts of our process. Go ahead, Mark. We need to keep this on track because it's already
Yes,
a long presentation.
as of the cases that were opened by the code enforcement team, we had 36% were complaint-driven, which was 1,238, and 64% were field-generated by the inspectors. And this gives you a little idea of the different inspectors and the number of cases that they opened up through the year. We'll go through each of the inspectors individually. The first inspector is Inspector Cligg. His duties are from the International Speedway Boulevard to the South City limits, and he has from the river to the railroad tracks. These are the cases that he opened. He opened cases on 48% were commercial properties and 49 were residential. Knowing that corridor, there's a lot more commercial going down the Ridgewood area, and that's why you see it a little higher than our typical averages.
His total was 285, it says over there.
Yes. And of those cases, 59, the large majority were the building exterior structure itself at 59, with the property maintenance exterior property at 32.
And you're going to see this pattern right here on these graphs, almost the same on every graph. If there's an anomaly, we'll stop and probably discuss it. But for the most part, you're going to always see that the exterior structure is going to be the highest category, and the exterior property is going to be the secondary.
And this is the residential properties. Now, it's residential, again, 51 on the exterior structure itself, and 27 on vehicles, because we're now doing it with the vehicles, parking on the yards and so forth, with 21 with the exterior property. %6 were field generated at 188, and 34% were complaint driven. These are some of the cases before and after. This is one here on 128 Orange that made a lot of difference. This is what the building looked like before and after. This is where we went in, where we had 1531 South Ridgewood. (719) Clark. This is after. And this is just other photos of the 1531 where we ended up having broken concrete, had to have a dumpster enclosure.
Yeah, we must have got that one accidentally spaced out,
Yeah.
but that's the after of the previous one you guys saw for that one.
If I may, I don't want to digress. Who's responsible for the apron, that beautiful concrete apron? Is that the city, or is that the?
No, the individual is responsible for the maintenance. Yeah, you're responsible for what we call the abutment area. So that area from the edge of your sidewalk all the way to the asphalt is still yours to maintain. Now, in some cases, it might be the city that would repair it, but that would be something that you'd have to work out with them if there was a reason for in that area. Yeah. Typically, it's part of your original site plan as a commercial property, and it would be responsible to put it back in, and if it was damaged, it needed to be repaired.
This is Inspector Wiggins. He has International Speedway going north to the city limits. He, again, is the river to the railroad tracks. He opened 402 cases. Of those cases, 60, I can't read the percentage, 62 or 3% was resident, it must be 68, and 32 was commercial properties. Of the commercial properties, 56 were exterior structure, with 47 the exterior of the property. On its residential cases, again, the same thing. 111 were the building structure, and 105 were the exterior of the property. Of his cases, 80% were field generated, and only 20% were complaint driven.
And that is an anomaly for his area compared to the other areas. For whatever reason, I don't know, they used to complain a lot up there, but they just don't anymore. So maybe it's, so we're up there working anyways, so
During 2021, Inspector Wiggins closed a total of 330 cases. The great number is he got 300 of them into compliance. Here's some before and after. This is on 633 North Ridgewood. And this is what it looks like after. This is 113 Fairview, before and after. 200 Kingston. Inspector Yates, he has beachside from Seabreeze to the northern city limits, the river to the ocean. During 2021, Inspector Yates opened 387 cases. 71% were residential, 24 were commercial. Of the commercial, again, 29 exterior structure, 23 exterior property. When it comes to the residential, you'll see that a change where 65% of the cases were exterior property and 60 were vehicles.
Yeah, so you can see there's like a bunch of anomalies in his zone, partly because he has a very complaint-driven zone. There's a lot of people calling in and complaining, and they like to call in about vehicles. They're also not always right about it being in a violation. So, but you can also see that there's a lot of work in that zone that's being done without permits, so the number's rather high in that zone for work that's being done in that area without permits as well.
Seabreeze Historic District.
Yeah, that's his zone. Well, I mean, it's not just historic district. It goes from Seabreeze all the way up. But yeah,
But that Seabreeze Historic District is very nice.
yes.
And this, again, goes along with, as you see, this is almost an even split with Inspector Yates's area of field-generated and complaint-driven. The total cases that were closed by Inspector Yates was 411, with 272 being brought into compliance. The large number here goes along a little bit with what the captain was saying, with a lot of complaint-driven cases. 100 of those cases that were called in by the time the inspector got up there the next day, the vehicles maybe weren't parked on the grass or we could not find any violation.
And this is Mark and I have already discussed. This is like a red flag number for us. There should probably not be 100 unfounded. So that means there's either a lack of understanding from the public as to what a violation is, or there's some other reason like the violation's disappearing before the inspector gets there, or the inspector's not identifying the violation. So we're going to work on trying to make sure that we're figuring out by looking at those 100 cases or some of those 100 cases to determine what maybe the issue is so that we can improve from there.
In referring to vehicles, this is parking on sidewalks and swells?
No, well, I mean, it could be, but in most of the times, those would be things that the law enforcement officers would address. But this is usually parking in your yard. Yeah, yeah.
So this is 484 Gulf before and after.
I think honestly, in this area, it's probably more boats parking in yards or trailers than it is cars. They're not allowed to be parked in your front yard. As long as so your recreational vehicles and your trailers can be parked in your side yard as long as they're behind the front edge of your house. Yeah.
But that does not include automobiles, pickup trucks. They have to be parked in a parking space, a driveway in the front. You cannot have your vehicle you can have your RVs, your trailers, your boats, but not the automobiles.
They've been parking a lot of 18-wheelers on Grandview.
check on that.
This is 842 North Peninsula, before and after. This is before and after on 215 Columbus, where you weren't able to even see the residents. Inspector Jean-Baptiste handles the corridor east of International Speedway Boulevard to Seabreeze Boulevard, the river to the ocean.
This is considered the Main Street redevelopment area, plus a block. We add an extra block to it because it's just more consistent enforcement for us to include Seabreeze in it.
Inspector JB opened 320 cases. Of those, 49% were residential and 46 were commercial. On the commercial property, 69 were the exterior structures, 31 was the exterior property maintenance. On the residential side, 59 were exterior structures and 54 were exterior property. As to field generated versus complaint driven, 28% were complaint driven, with the majority of 71% being field generated. Out of the 212 cases that Inspector JB closed, 157 of those were in compliance. He was able to get them into compliance. Here's some photographs of before and after of 319 Fifth Avenue. Before and after of South Hollywood, 319. Yes, it does. Yeah. Yep. That's an error. My inspector sending me the photographs. This is 161 South Halifax, before and after. This is 430 North Atlantic. This is 175 South Atlantic. And this is 30 South Hollywood. And there's an example of a car being parked on the yard. Yeah. Again, before and after. Oops, excuse me. Mark Boswick, he has East International Speedway Boulevard going south to the city limits. He's got the river to the ocean. Inspector Boswick opened 390 cases. Of those cases, 84% were residential and 15% were commercial. Of the commercial properties, he was evenly split between the exterior of the structure and the exterior of the property. On residential, exterior structure was only 94, where his exterior property maintenance was 157. Of his cases, 78.7 were field generated, and only 21% were complaint driven.
Which seems like an anomaly because it's inconsistent with what the average for the group is, but that area consistently doesn't really call and complain that much. So it's good that we have an active inspector down there that drives around identifying issues.
Captain, I live in that area. But I just want to say Boswick does
Yeah, we appreciate him. He does a very good job.
the triple bypass,
Appreciate you saying that. We'll pass it on to him.
Here's a house on South Peninsula, the before and after.
This is probably our best before and after, just gonna be honest, for the night.
And this again was one that did take a long time because not only did we have to go through change in ownership, but then we had to go through a permitting process and then allowing the property owner to do the remodel.
$699 on the other.
Another property on South Peninsula,
The pink house, they cleaned it up, yeah.
another property on South Peninsula, 1515 South Peninsula, before and after. This is on Tomoka Terrace. Harrison, 130 Harrison. .420 Lennox. Any other questions for this district? Okay. We'll be handling the rental area. The short-term and rentals will be handled
Yeah, there's a
after this.
section of the presentation
Yeah.
for rentals. Are you asking, are they allowed? Is that what you're asking? There are areas where the zoning allows for other accommodations. Other accommodations, by definition, would allow for short-term rental. If you have a property that's in one of those areas, then you would be allowed to do it. But those areas are pretty small. It's not just one zone. Yeah, so, you can go, you can go to our zoning maps are available online. Yeah. Yeah, I think you can actually, I think the public map allows for you to click on the parcels too, and then click for the use form, right?
There's a new map up there now, but you can just type in the address and it tells you what zoning district and what it is now.
That may be operating. There's probably close to 3,000 or so in the city, maybe a little over that. Yeah, based on the information provided to me, it's heavily on the peninsula. Almost entirely on the peninsula. No, the data that I'm provided is based on listings. Sometimes those are duplicate lists. Most of several of those would be duplicate listings. So it was when I had the conversation before, it was about 1,000 to 1,200 less than the listing number for actual properties. It could be.
John, do you have a question?
Wait, I think he's not done his question.
So the condos on the Daytona Beach, they're not inspected for short-term rentals. Condo associations, anything like that?
If they're allowed to be licensed, or if they're allowed to do short-term rental, they have to come in and obtain a business tax receipt for that. And they would go through the minimum business tax receipt inspection. And there's not a licensing process for that beyond that. Anything beyond that would be through their condo association. If they're doing it illegally, meaning they're doing it in an area where they're not allowed to do it, then that would be something that once it's reported to us, we would investigate and inspect to try to determine that if they were conducting that activity. No.
No, that's what I'm here. I'm curious to find out. We have, how many are the condos?
That's my best guesstimation based on data that's provided by companies that provide services that locate and search for these. I think this is a better conversation for when we get to that part of the that you'll see that. So Big, you had a question. Does somebody have a mic back there? Or is it? Oh, yeah, there you go. You're pretty loud actually today. They have an active and open permit right now, and, well, I can tell you that I went by there was it last week, and they had received a rather large shipment of sliding glass doors. And they have another shipment supposedly of glass coming in behind that, but they didn't have a date of delivery yet. I guess glass has been part of the hangup. That's about the best answer I can give you. Other than that, I have not seen any evidence of any work. It doesn't appear that any work has been done on the property since probably May of last year.
But you're not chickening out on this one, are you?
No, I'm still addressing it
All right.
as best I can.
I don't want you to address it. I want you to get them to do it.
Well, I mean, code enforcement can only do so much. The building department has to address their parts of it too.
All right, then, and you're moving on the Americanos.
I was just, but by the way, the glass part, the glass part, I was just expressing to you what they were relaying to me.
Oh.
I did verify this though by visiting and seeing the sliding glass doors.
Did you see him?
Yes, and I also saw some log sheets verifying deliveries.
All right, then, hey, buddy, would you give it a break for a minute? Geez. Hey, Steve, tone him down.
You need to-
God, he must be on drugs
You
or
might need to
something.
bring them on your radio and just wear them out.
Where are we at with the Americano?
So the previous meeting, so after November, I don't know if it was based on a conversation or a phone call that somebody made, because they knew they were looking at a pretty heavy fine. But somebody got folks over there engaged and involved, and they have been doing things. They have been working with our inspector to get quite a few things corrected between November and January. And my understanding is we're to the point where we're getting them back on track. So the hope is that we should have an articulated plan as to where we're going and how long it's going to take. I'm hoping by the next magistrate meeting, which would be in February. So it was just continued to February, wasn't it? Yeah. So I'm hoping that we'll have a better answer for you next month. But I am happy to see they're actually involved in the process now because they were non-responsive before that. So it's good to see that people are actually engaged. Anybody else? Okay, we're moving on. Okay, Denzel's gonna probably ignore everybody until he gets to the question slide because just learning every.
Okay. This is Inspector Butler, and his duties and responsibilities is Mason to the North City limits, Clyde Morris to the railroad tracks, International Speedway Boulevard to the North City limits, I-95 to Clyde Morris. That's a large area.
Very diverse,
Very
a lot
large
of
area.
commercial, a lot of residential, a lot of different types of neighborhoods. It's huge.
And during 2021, Inspector Butler opened 387 cases. Of those 387 cases, 84% were residential and 16% were commercial. And here, just a little different than what you had on the beach side. Here you have the property maintenance exterior of the property was a little higher with 13, and also the subtype unassigned, so that varies. And
Yeah,
that's
so that usually means that those cases were unfounded, because that means they showed up, they can't find the violation people were calling about, so they don't know what category to put it in, so it just stays as unassigned. But it is kind of high it's kind of weird for it to be the highest category, so we're looking at that too.
And residential, you see it's high ones of vehicles again, that's parking on the grass, probably some vehicles on the property with no license, unregistered, flat tires, things of that nature. And after that, again, you see the exterior of the property is fairly high too on the residential side. And he had 169 complaint-driven cases, which is 56.3% of his cases, and also, 43.7% of his cases, and field generated 218%, which is 56.3% of his cases. And during 2021, Inspector Butler closed 105 cases, and no, they just told me it's a typo.
Yeah, sorry, I
It's
forgot
a
to
typo.
change that number.
No, what it said was compliance. So that's a typo. We apologize for that. And here's some of his before and after photos. You know. Yeah. And what you find also in certain areas of the city, like the rust stains that you see on some of it, they're more prevalent in some areas than others, because other areas use a shallower well system than other areas. And they are addressing those as they come across them. And here's before and after. Again, it's 704 Alabama, mold, mildew, and, different things. So good job there. Yep. And this is the after photo. And here's another one. He just got them for some shrubbery and a little exterior work. And this is one of the cases where the property owner went above and beyond what we asked them to do. And you can see the facade that they put up, as well as shaped their hedges. Yeah, added to the facade. Yeah. And, every now and again, we get people who want to dump, and that's another issue we have throughout the city, beach side, mainland, west side, east side, north, it doesn't matter. Wherever they find vacant land or somewhere where less traveled, you're going to run into these areas. And again, this is another photo. This is before picture, 1002 Alice Drive. And here's the after picture. I think he took it when it was raining, so not as effective, but we let you see it. There's 2 shots on there. Okay. And here's 101 Indigo. Yep. And again, they maintain, and they are maintaining now more than they have been in the past. And this is one of our regular routines, and we stay up on this one. Yes. Okay, and now we on Inspector Michael Fitzgerald. His duties and responsibilities are from International Speedway Boulevard to Mason Avenue, from the railroad tracks to Clyde Morris. And his is fairly large, but it's a dense area. During 2021, Inspector Fitzgerald opened 260 cases. Of those 260 cases, 69% of those were residential write-ups, and 25% were commercial properties. And 25 of those were maintenance for the exterior of the structure. And then again, we have the various types, which was explained to you on the last slides, and then followed up by the exterior of the properties, which is your grass and fence and things. On the residential side, you see the maintenance of the exterior structure is very high, followed by maintenance of the exterior of the property as well. Okay, he had 100 complaint driven, which was 38.5%, and field generated was 160, which was 61.5%. And of his 298 cases closed, 227 of those were in compliance, 23 were unfounded.
Yeah, you can say it. Yeah, so there, he has one of the higher numbers. You'll see some of the inspectors right after him too. So he's got 27 liens listed there. You know, it's anything, that lien category encompasses everything. Those could be liens that people already paid. Those could be liens that have since been, the issues have been corrected, and then the magistrate has had a re-review of the lien and they've released them. It could also be liens that are out there just sitting on the property, waiting to be paid or addressed.
And here's some of his before and after photos. This is 606 Washington Street. That's before and after. Oh, okay. And our next inspector is Inspector Sarah Kirk. Her duties and responsibilities are from Bellevue Avenue to International Speedway, from the railroad tracks to Clyde Morris. And again, this is a very large area. In some areas, it's fairly dense as well. During 2021, Inspector Kirk opened 317 cases. Of those 317 cases, 73% were residential properties, with 23% commercial properties, and then you see vacant lots in there as well as some other referrals. So on her commercial properties, again, her largest number here is the exterior of the structures, and then followed by the exterior of the properties on the commercial side. On the residential side, we see the same pattern. 72 of the cases were for exterior of the structure, when 64 of the cases were for exterior of the property. She had 121 cases complaint-driven, which is a total of 38.2%, and field generated was 196, which is 61.8%. During 2021, Inspector Kirk closed 338 cases. Of those 338 cases, 247 have been found in compliance, and you see that lien number also is 33. And this is some of her photos, before and after photos. And they did a great job here. And also, what you'll notice too is part of the streetscape that just happened, that the city came and did that, which adds to the ambiance a little bit. And here's another one, 736 Vernon. There you go. And his after photo. This is 602 El Dorado. You see the before, and then you see the after picture there. And here's another 613 Cedar Park Drive, where you see the before photo and the after photo. And this is 640 Orange Avenue. Actually, this particular one had a fire, and they came in and did a pretty good job on rehabbing. So, and they repaired it and put it up for sale.
This is one of those ones that was with us for like a long time too. Like it was, yeah. I don't even remember, but
I think it's about a couple of years.
yeah, it was, yeah, because the first person bought it, and they tried to remodel. They got a little too, I guess, too heavily committed to it, and then it resold to somebody else, and they kind of had to restart.
Okay, and this is 717 Magnolia. This is before. Then after it's so good you can't see it. Yeah, so let's go back. So we just forgot the photo, but it is a nice improvement on that property. Yeah. You see the trim, the trees. Yeah. I'm not sure what happened, but it's Boston. Yeah. I'm gonna just scroll through it. Okay, so these are some of Mark Bostwick's photos. I'm assuming that he wanted to share, and we haven't, so I'll just scroll through them. This is before, and this is the after. Yep. And this is 420 Wisteria. And again, just a great job. You can't see it. Yeah.
I don't think it was on them. I think that one might have been on us.
Okay.
I don't think we originally
And-
had these in here.
Okay, and we're back to Sarah Kirk, who I was going through her slides. So here's another before photo. There we go. Hey, but hey, trust me, they're nice. And the next inspector is Inspector John Stinson. His duties and responsibilities are from Bellevue Avenue to South City limits, from railroad tracks to Clyde Morris, to International Speedway Boulevard, to the South City limits, and I-95 to Clyde Morris, which is another large area. During 2021, Inspector Stinson opened 336 cases. Of those 336 cases, 80% of those were residential properties, and 15% were commercial properties, and then the other 5% are between referrals from different departments and vacant lots, which I'll get to shortly. And of the commercial properties, the exterior of his properties were a larger issue. And he has, in his area, he has Sam's, Walmart, and those have been some pretty involved cases for us, especially Sam's. I know we've had several cases out there. Someone ran through the wall. We had to get on them on that. A lot of landscape.
That's actually a good. That's a good one to talk about. Well, apparently they've leased it to somebody. I don't know who, who's supposed to be doing something with it this year. I can tell you that we've been going. John has been working with them for several months now, probably almost 6, trying to get them to get their landscaping corrected. This all kind of stemmed from some community complaints where, when you're turning into the Walmart there near the McDonald's, there's a lot of gathering of people in the vegetation there, and you're having a lot of drug use and hiding in that vegetation there. Yeah, and you're having all sorts of loitering and people just camping and living in that vegetation, and that vegetation is all stuff that's overgrown and that has really exceeded what their original site plan for that property was. So as we've been addressing that property with them, we've been trying to get them to return it to their original site plan. And we thought we really had them going in the right direction. If you had been out there when it was first going on, they ground up a bunch of those palms that were there, those little bush palms, and dug out that area, and then they kind of just stopped, and they didn't do anything else with the rest of the property. And so we kind of try to re-engage their regional facilities manager and say, hey, we just want you to know, this was back in November. We're asking for a pretty hefty fine in January if we don't get somewhere with this. And they assured us they were going to get it all done, and they did not. So we did end up asking for a $500 a day fine that would run until it hit a max of $115,000 on that property. And we got was that last week? Last week at the magistrate. So Now, immediately after that, I did see some improvement finally in the landscape. They somehow planted some trees and some bushes almost immediately after that. So the hope is they'll hopefully get it into compliance, and we'll get them going in the right direction. I am not confident that they realize they still have to take care of the Sam's property or force their new leasee to take care of the Sam's property. So we're working through that part of the conversation as well. We've been telling them that, but they don't want to hear that. So it's a work in progress, but we're on a path to get it corrected. Like I told them, hey, that this really needs to be the best looking Walmart in Volusia County. Let's get there. Now, I will tell you that there are some improvements coming to that Walmart this year too, and it's supposed to be getting the updated facade to it when they add a portion of it for, I forget what type of additional service that they're going to provide out of there. So that'll be a good improvement for that property as well.
Okay, for John Stinson's residential property, again, his highest cases are for exterior of the structure for the residential, followed by the maintenance of the exterior of the properties. So are there any questions for District 1? Yes, sir. No.
I didn't hear who the inspector is that would be south of Mason and east of the railroad tracks.
That was in District 2. It was Curtis Wiggins when Mark was presenting
Oh, that's
before.
District 2.
Yeah, we went by and I drove down there with Mr. Wiggins and pointed out the concerns. We also had a police call at the other one to the south, I believe you're referring to.
Right,
Where I think they're living in,
right.
they've turned one of the garages into a living unit, so we're addressing that as well. The issue about chop shops, that's a law enforcement issue. It's really not.
What's that? I didn't hear you.
It's the issue about chop shops, if they're doing the activity, which you would refer to as chop shops, like illegally chopping cars into pieces and then transporting them somewhere or selling them.
Yeah, that's why they got
yeah.
the big containers come in there.
Right, that would be criminal activity that we would need to report to. That wouldn't be something that this unit would address, is what I'm
So
saying.
is somebody gonna look into that?
The properties, yeah, we already took the inspectors by. We're taking care of it.
All
If
right.
I see any evidence of a chop shop, I will make sure I put a law enforcement
That's
professional on
what
it.
they do there.
Yeah, but making assumptions and thinking that's what people do there is great, but I need evidence.
They don't bring in those big containers to leave empty.
Judge is not going to sign off on that.
I'm sorry?
The judge is not going to sign off on that.
I'm telling you, they're chop shops.
What do you mean? I just told, are you talking about the code enforcement don't work at nights to see this? I just told you that code enforcement doesn't work crimes. There's law enforcement out at night too. They're responsible for patrolling the zone and handling those issues. Are you handling it? The next,
Yeah.
so just,
Yeah,
I will just say before he jumps into this next part, he's gonna cover vacant lots. Inspector Garcia is the one assigned to it. But the before and after photos mostly are houses and stuff because Danny just at the beginning of the year transitioned to this role and he had a bunch of cases throughout the year he closed out that I think he's just proud of.
Okay,
the
not a
work was done.
problem.
Go ahead.
So Inspector Garcia, his duties and responsibilities are vacant lots citywide. And a vacant lot, as we identify it for Inspector Garcia, are lots that should be vacant that does not have a primary structure on it. You know, a lot of times you may see an accessory structure like a garage is left that was detached, but the home is gone, things of that nature, or dumping, or dilapidated fences, or things of that nature. Excuse me? Yeah, that's part of trash and debris. Yeah. And so that's what he does, and he's citywide. So because the city is so large and this is a one-man show for this, you know, the other inspectors, they will, in their areas, they see it, they identify and pass it on to Inspector Garcia.
And I will say, this is a program that we're kind of going back to. We had a lot clearance program before. It really got turned into us being like the lawn service for everybody with a vacant lot. We were cheaper. It was cheaper to let us catch you and maybe pay a couple times of the year. And we just converted to a process where we were taking them through the normal enforcement process so that we could levy fines against the property. And on several of these, we've started to seek foreclosure on those properties because there's just absentee landlords that just are not even, some of them not even in the country. And they're just not responsive to our notices. They don't do anything to correct it. And what we found is that over time, we even just, as a community and as a staff, didn't really, we kind of let what we expected a vacant lot to look like degrade. So we've had to kind of retrain Danny and ourselves to really kind of demand more of what a vacant lot should look like. And so we've had a lot of conversations about, you know, keeping the fence line clear of vegetation, raising the canopy up so that law enforcement can see through the property to see if there's any trespassers. You know, hopefully getting them to sign up on our trespass arrest site programs. You know, if there's, you know, half a fence there, well, it's half a fence that needs to come down, or you need to get the lot properly permitted for a vacant lot fence. Things like that. So it's been a work in progress, and we're going to continue to work on that program as we go forward too.
I do want to say one thing. The previous program that we had trying to clear lots, a lot of times the property owner would literally not cut it, wait for us to cut, and by the time we calculated, they paying us $65, $80, you know, and they would not cut it, you know. So now trying to revamp it again. We're not trying to extort any money from the property owners, but we're trying to encourage them to cut it themselves. So if we have to take them to court, so if you know anybody, you can pass this word. We're going to start out at $250 a day on a fine if we have to cut your grass, if we have to go in there. And again, that's just to motivate you to take care of your own properties.
But this is going back to putting the fine out the first day.
Well, not the first. We still have to go through the process. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, but initially, yeah, that's that first one.
Well, we're also looking at, we're trying to rebuild the abatement program in a way that's more effective, that actually gets the lot back to where it should be through the abatement, and that the cost is rolled to the property and hopefully eventually rolls to the tax bill as well if it's not paid. So we're working on those types of processes, and hopefully we'll get somewhere with that. That would be, it's more, the point is if enforcement doesn't have some type of impact, it won't work. So you have to, it's no point in spinning your wheels and keep doing enforcement that's just having no effect, you know.
And during 2021, Inspector Garcia opened 290 cases. And of those 290 cases, I believe that says 98% were vacant lots. 93% of it was vacant lots, if I say so. Yeah. And you can see the special events and other things that add up to the other 5% commercial property, residential referrals by other cities and special events. And as you can see, 244 of those were multiple violations, which means that they have more than one violation that he cited on the symptoms. And here he's almost 50-50. Complaint driven was 153%, which is 51.3% of his cases, and field generated was 145 at 48.7%. And here's the Invisible Man again. Let me scroll through, see if we can find one.
Did you not come up with a
Okay.
closed
No,
slide?
yeah, that's why I'm
Oh.
going to the next one.
Strange.
All right, so here's a before. Okay, so we'll keep going. Which, this isn't the one you just looked at. The before here at 836 South Palmetto, for some reason, didn't come over. So we'll keep going.
Yeah, the problem is that the presentation's for the entire year, so there was so many photos in it that I think it's just a transfer error. We just didn't let it download completely. That's our error. I apologize. We'll make sure that we double check the posted one on the website. And, I think Xavier's gonna tell us what's up.
Yes, if you don't mind, it is going to be on the recording. Like the pictures that you're missing, they're over here.
Oh, they are showing
I
up on
think
that
I
end.
think they're running an older version of PowerPoint that might be the situation.
Oh, okay.
Not a problem.
But yeah, it's going to be on the website.
Okay, not a problem. All right, so we're not advancing right now.
Yeah, Xavier, it's not moving forward for us again. Yeah, if anybody wants to review this later, in more detail, it is available on the city's website.
But when you look at them,
So we can use both. So we use International Property Maintenance Code is what we prefer that our inspectors utilize. They do use our municipal codes though occasionally as well. And sometimes it's our municipal codes just cover stuff that the International Property Maintenance Codes don't cover. And we're using our ordinance is written where it adopts the most current version. So right now it's at 2021. The city does. The International Property Maintenance Code? That's what's provided to us by, what's the organization, ICC?
ICC,
Yeah. We don't
The
write.
national
Are you
organization.
asking if we write it? We don't write it.
we adopted it.
We adopt the book. That's correct.
Yeah, and that's a nationwide organization. Oh, okay, well, okay. No, okay, so, no,
The reason why that we use the International Property Maintenance Code, see, I think you're thinking of like building codes and you're thinking about the international, residential building codes and things like that. That stuff, I could see where you might have some kind of level of concern. But we're talking about international property maintenance codes. These things are very broadly written. They're very clearly written, which is part of why we prefer our inspectors use them. They are very clearly stating what the issues are and what needs to be addressed or what can or can't occur on the property. Really, we prefer our inspectors use them unless there's something that they need out of one of the city codes because it's more clear to the citizen what's required of them.
and it's written in layman's term, so when we provide the notice to the property owner, it's easier for them to understand as well. But
I mean, these are also codes that are used in multiple jurisdictions across the country, and run into probably the most amount of challenges you could probably imagine out of any one particular code. So if there was a problem with it, they're quick to address that and deal with that. And we would adapt as well as if we needed to.
No luck. All right, so while they do that, we're going to have a talent show.
Yeah. June, do you just want to talk about your information? Oh, yeah, I have it all right here if you want. I mean, most of it's information that she's, I mean, most of it's, oh, yeah, that's the top sheet, sorry. I took, yeah. They're double-sided, so you might just want to flip them.
Were there no more questions for vacant lots? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I manage the day-to-day operations for the rental program and, so I'm still learning and we're still building. There are currently 1,709 active rental licenses in the city. All licenses must be renewed annually. Inspections for properties with less than 4 units are mandatory every 2 years. Rental team conducted 1,201 inspections during 2021. Of the 645 initial inspections, 202 of those passed, 411 of them failed. Of the rental re-inspections that we completed, 556 were completed, 404 and 39 failed. So of the 645 initial inspections, 64% of the first inspections failed last year. Of the 556 re-inspections, 73% passed inspection. Overall, for all inspections conducted last year, 50-50. I have 3 inspectors. I have Inspector Lawanda Domingo, who handles the south side of the town, which would be south of Main Street. And then I have Stephen Cole, who handles the north side of the city. Lawanda opened 198 cases last year and closed 298. 89 of those were field generated, 89 were complaint generated, and 109 of them were field generated. Stephen opened 105 cases and closed 227, and I don't think Stephen was quite here for the full year of 2021.
No, he started, right around the beginning of the year, so he spent probably the first quarter to first half of the year in training. Yeah.
57 of those were field generated, 48 of them were complaint driven. And then we have Cliff Robinson. Cliff is assigned to the rental team and investigates all the short-term rentals for the city. Since January of 2021, 76 cases for short-term rentals have been brought before the special magistrate. The cases appearing before the special magistrate have resulted in total fines in the amount of $289,625.
That's what has been levied. We don't. Right, right. We do collect a surprising amount though, because the properties tend to change hands. And when they do, they pay at the sale usually, or they come in and ask for a lien review, but in most of these cases, these are one-time irreparable fines. They don't typically get a reduction unless they have some extenuating circumstance that the magistrate takes into consideration. Oh, yeah, it still does. I mean, there's still times where we have to extend the timeline out because somebody either was close contact or is sick, and we have to tell the magistrate we have to continue a case for another month. In fact, I think we have one this month where we're asking them to continue because we just need to give the person time for that.
It'd be nice to get a hard number on fines
Mm-hmm.
from the inspector.
Yeah, as far as what we're collecting, yeah, we're working
It'd be
actually.
nice to see a nice number on
Yeah, so we are changing a couple of things as we're going into, you guys should, real soon, you'll be able to see a new mapping system on our website that actually identifies the properties based on the status they're in. So you'll be able to see the properties that are, they'll be color-coded if they're in a lien status for one. And then you'll be able to click on it and see whether it's collected or not collected, because it'll show up and say satisfied if it was collected. And it would show up and say released if it was released, or it would say running if it's running, or if it would just say filed if it was still there, it was existing. With a dollar amount, yes. And then on top of that, what we're looking at adding to our presentation here is a slide or some part at the end here that just deals with liens overall, just one slide that talks about, hey, these are the amount of liens that the group collected over the year and or over the quarter, and these are kind of the results, and this is how much money came in. The difficult part for this presentation, and especially the quarterly presentations, is the fines that they get imposed in that quarter really aren't a reflection of what we collect. But what we can tell you relatively easy is what we collected in that quarter. It might not correlate to the cases that we worked in that quarter, but we can tell you what we collect in that quarter. That's relatively easy. We track that information anyways. I will tell you that, just to give you an example though, of how we've improved our process of enforcement and how we've improved our consistency in enforcement. Just to give you an example, when they came back over to the police department, which was 3.5 years ago, they were about, right around 160, I think they were bringing in about $160,000 in fines a year that they were collecting. Now, they were levying fines, I don't know at what rate, because that's not really something that's kept track. That's just what was being collected. Last year, we collected just over $500,000. Yeah, so that, I think it was $530,000, right around that mark. And so it's grown from each of that year, it's kind of grown up from that 160. And really, what that really has to do with is the focus that we've had has not been solely about increasing the quantity of cases. It's really been about increasing the quality of the cases. We are not we're not losing a lot of cases in court. We're not seeing a lot of cases being appealed. And we're making sure that our due process is intact. We're reviewing all that as supervisors during our pre-meets and stuff like that as well, to make sure that we're following the law, that our inspectors are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that we're providing everybody an opportunity to be able to resolve it before they ever even have to get to a fine. In that way, it puts us in the best position to say, hey, we tried everything before we got here. And then at that point, we're just following through. That's one of the things that I think is going to be improved upon even more as we go forward, is we're now working pretty regularly with the legal team to make recommendations about what properties should be foreclosed on. And we start what we call a pre-foreclosure process, where we start contacting them and tell them we are now seeking foreclosure on this lien. And a lot of times that forces either a change of hands of the property at that time, or they contact us to try to work out some arrangements to resolve the complaint first and then the lien after. So our city attorney is Tony Jackson, that's assigned to us, and he's very involved. We work with him on almost a weekly basis. Well, he's the police legal advisor attorney, but he probably spends, I would say, most of his time working with our department, more so than probably anything else. He still handles the police department, so arraignments for city ordinances and RPOs, risk protection orders, are a huge thing. The last couple of years, it's been a big thing on his plate as well. But it's very time consuming, and yeah, that's a salary that costs money. So that is another cost that the city incurs to make sure that this enforcement is done correctly. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. So in the 300 block of Seabreeze, I'll start there, mainly because at the last magistrate meeting, and I wasn't present, I had to step out, but the owner that had the grease spill, I want to say it was 308. Was it 308? 308 Seabreeze had the grease spill that, if you recall, it spilled down onto the sidewalks down on Seabreeze. The city had to come out and mitigate, help clean up. And this was the second time this had happened. And we came in pretty upset about it. We put a lot of city effort into having to clean it up and communicate with them and try to get it corrected, and really has not been adequately corrected. And we'd asked for a $15,000 fine. Mr. Vikelj, after considering everything, he ended up fining him $2,500. I think he was pretty irritated about the situation still, though. I can tell you that we had a case later that day or the next day, I can't recall, I think it was the next day, where I think we had to point out that the process of the person coming to compliance was actually slowed by the grease spillage. We have 2 cases right in that area that are directly impacting the quality of that back parking lot that we're working on. And there's some additional ones as well. So we're working to improve, and I think if you go by there, you'll see that there's been some cleanup that's going on up there. It's by no means perfect, but there is some plans by those property owners that own those sections of that alleyway to start redoing parts of those alleyways to improve that based on some of the enforcement that we've done. So we're on a path on that one. The one, jump across the street and go down the road to behind the Oyster Pub. And again, I have not had a chance to go by and see the final project, but I saw it when it was almost at its final stages. That back parking lot, they cleaned up a huge amount of trash and debris and landscape that was just really uncared for so many years back in there, was just minimally cared for. And they put in rock beds in there. They removed an extra storage container that they had back out there that was an eyesore. And they enclosed the dumpsters. I think was the last thing they had to get done. They got that done, right? Yeah. So they enclosed the dumpsters, which has been kind of one of our fights in that area with them about those 2 dumpsters, because they're just unsightly. That's the best way to say it. Which dumpsters tend to look unsightly, right? They're where we put trash, so they don't always look in the best condition. That is come a long way from where it was a year ago. That one's looking really nice. There's been a lot of improvement back there. Jump back across the street behind the hookah bar and Coyote Ugly. That one's still a work in progress too. There's been a lot of cleanup done back there. The trash and debris is not as big of a problem. That parcel owner for 500 has really cleaned up a lot of he's had the property owner, or the property manager, I should say, has done some painting and some things like that. So the building's starting to look a little better, but the big things have not been done on that parcel. And we're not really seeing any real traction that we're working on getting those big things done. So we're still keeping an eye on that. We're still pushing forward on that case. And we're actually going to be going back out there soon and re-engaging that back part of that alleyway again, because it kind of became obvious to us when we were working on that 500 parcel that Coyote Ugly had probably expanded or exceeded its use, and that might be causing some of that that trash, that spillage of trash, that they just have more trash than they had before, and they've got to come up with a plan to be able to move that trash in and out of there appropriately without it just going everywhere and creating a disaster for the neighborhood. No, and in fact, our department is walked I think we've walked Seabreeze and rode up businesses I think we've done it at least, like the whole strip of road, I think we've done it at least once a year for the last 3 years, attempting to just routinely address things and bring it up. And it wasn't until finally this last year where we started to get a lot of traction from some of the business owners. So before, people were fixing things, but it was always a minimal fixing. So we're starting to see people actually getting it. They're starting to get it. Like it's about improvement. It's trying to get the area to look nicer, to be nicer, to be treated nicer. So we're working in that direction, but it's still got a ways to go. Mr. Strickland. Who owns the hookah bar, the business or the property? Antoine Gandy is the person who owns it? It's the, yeah, he's a businessman, he's a business professional.
People, businesses, commercial lots in front of their buildings or
So when we talked about earlier about the abutment area, that area between, we were really talking about it before, in the residential areas where it's from your sidewalk to the asphalt. It's the same for commercial areas. And some commercial areas have service agreements with the city, or they, have other agreements as a business district where it's done. But for the most part, you are responsible for that area from the frontage of your business all the way to the asphalt of the road. That's the abutment area. That's the area that abuts your business, and you're responsible for maintaining it. I don't disagree with you. I think yes. Well, so there's a requirement under our ordinance, yes. So that's one of the things this last year we've started adding into our ordinance is if you have a dirt and grime violation, for example. So if we're there addressing dirt and grime on your building, and you also have a grimy sidewalk, for example, then what we're doing is we're including that extra ordinance for the abutment ordinance under there. And that way, when we say, hey, you gotta clean your sidewalk as well, the abutment ordinance is there to support it. It says you got to clean it because the ordinance says that's your responsibility to clean it as well. So we've started adding that in, and it's been a little tricky for the inspectors too, because at first I think for them that it was a little bit like too much like an HOA, but it's required under the order. It's required under the law, and it is. I agree with you in the sense that it is one of those things that should be routinely done to keep things from looking unsightly. Yeah, no problem. Emily, I think you had one more thing. Oh, yeah, they are. Yeah, I think that the issue is that in business districts, sometimes there's a partnership between the business district and the city, right? Where you have a vested interest in making sure it succeeds. So sometimes the business district, sometimes the city does things maybe at their own cost to see a business district succeed in the best interest of the city overall. But those can't necessarily be long-term plans, right? You got to find ways to. You gotta find ways to. Well, it's definitely doable. There's a way to do it. I mean, it's just, and I know that some people in the past have discussed that, so. Yeah, yeah. I don't disagree with what you've said there. Do we have any other questions before I just wrap it up here? Because I think Pastor Barhu is probably, well, we're here later than we usually are. I mean, 8:30 is usually our absolute cutoff. Oh, I did forget our problem-oriented policing unit. I will go over their numbers real fast. Our problem-oriented policing unit, their focus for the year started out with a program we called SMART. It was a partnership between us at Stuart Marchman and the state attorney's office. It was really focused on program or service-resistant individuals who would return back to the community in the same places over and over again. That was our beginning of the year focus. Our end of the year focus for them is, and really going on into this new year, has been about career offenders, folks that are required to register in the city. It aligns with their this unit's duty of monitoring sex offenders who register in the city as well, and they are now monitoring and making sure that the career offenders are properly registering. It's not something that probably was adequately being done before, and they've been routinely working it over the last couple of months, and we've been seeing some improvements, and it's been helping patrol as well, clearing up some of their cases by helping to get some people off the streets that were causing some problems for patrol. They made 380, and I'll keep in mind this is normally a 7-officer unit, and they are for most of the year been, I think, 3 or 4 officers. Yeah, 3, maybe 4 at most. So they had 389 arrests. For the year, they wrote 557 reports. They executed 80 search warrants, which might be more than the entire rest of the police department combined. They did 288 compliance checks, and out of their 389 arrests, 32 of those were offender arrests based on those checks and follow-ups that they were doing for offenders. That was a combination of both career and sex offenders. And there's been a massive improvement in our checks on sex offenders. Before, we had a very we doled it out to zone units, and they didn't really understand what was required of them when they went and did checks, or what they could ask for and what information they could collect. And since Kevin Connolly and his unit took it over, folks are, they just are shocked by the amount of questions they get asked during a check, and the information that we actually gather and collect. And it's all within what's required and what's allowed. And it's very helpful for us. And people have changed a lot of their behavior, and they're just following the rules now as a result of some of that follow-up. How many of that number? Well, they wouldn't be on that list if they weren't repetitive. For this unit, for the career offenders? Oh, well, probably for this unit, they probably haven't repeated for them. Usually if they make a case on a career offender, the career offender is sitting in jail until they see. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I don't think I'm not sure what part of this presentation you're asking that question about, though. Yeah, so I'd have to bring you I think what you're asking more about is like the Stuart Marchman program. Some of those people are cycled through that program and they repeat. It's actually not as high as you think. I thought the same thing when we started the program. I was like, oh, a lot of these people are going to reoffend and repeat through here. We gathered all that data as part of the grant that Stuart Marchman got for that program, and it was actually a lot lower than I thought. I want to say we had, the last time I saw it, and I can get you updated numbers and we can push them out next time, but it was, I think 2 months ago, the last meeting I was at, it was right around, we had like 60 reoccurrences in the previous 3 months. but those 60 reoccurrences were only from 20 people. You know, yes, and that's the whole point of that program, is trying to divert those people to a resource that somebody can provide, like Stuart Marchman, so that it's not bogging down a law enforcement officer, the jail, or the hospital, because that's really what that program was being built to try to intercept, is to just say, hey, you can, here's the deal. If you want to avoid the eventual prosecution of what you're now been arrested for, we can put you into a program right now, or we can get you tracked to a program right now. After you talk to this case manager and they determine what program best suits your needs, and that would avoid, you know, as long as you comply with that, then your case would be worked down. And these are low-level crimes anyways that most people were getting time served. And what we were seeing immediately is people that were normally seeing the judge and getting out time served and returning back to the location, sometimes faster than the officer could get back to the next day on their shift, were remaining out in the jail. The ones that were reluctant to want to participate, they were remaining out in the jail for now, 10, 15 days, as opposed to being cycled right back out into the street. The ones that wanted to work within the program, they were cycled out to the caseworkers, and the caseworkers were checking in with them routinely, and they were working them into sober living houses, assisted houses, where they could get set up, and then having to check on them every day. Yep. Yes, ma'am. It was a test program, and I was supposed to be at a meeting today, which I would have a better answer for you, but I was preparing this presentation, so I skipped that meeting. And so I don't know, but I can tell you that everything in the meeting before that was indicating that we would most likely be able to receive gap funding to continue it, and that we would be pushing, and we seem to have the support that that some folks in the legislative body liked the program and thought that it was something that could potentially be a model in other places in the state, so that they were going to push to support it come July, I believe. So, we're moving forward with that. It has its growing pains and kind of working through it, and we had people that kind of slipped through the cracks. But I think as we work 6 months through that, though, I think there are areas that we saw some improvement, that finally the people that kept slipping through, we kind of got them tracked in and worked through that. The corner, we still have our problem corners, though. Sometimes it's the different faces now, but it's going to be, thank you guys for coming out. We really, the biggest part of this is having community support. It's a big deal for the inspectors and for all of the whole team. The support staff that sits in the office there's people that you guys never even see even at these meetings. We have a board coordinator that has more work than probably 3 people could do. And just to know that the community's out here supporting us and, having our back is much appreciated. Those of you that come out here to the meetings, we appreciate that. Those of you who are watching and those of you who provide comments and positive feedback all the time, we do really appreciate that. Thank you. Pastor Barhu, thank you for letting us use the facilities. It was a great facility. Thank you. I don't have the next Code Stat meeting, mainly because when I looked at the calendar, it was my daughter's birthday when it would normally fall. And I got to figure out if she'll be 11. So I was like, I got to figure out if she's going to be with me or her mom before I just commit to this date. And once I know that, then I'll announce the date and time and place, and we'll get it all worked out. Okay? And no problem. Thank you guys. Good night.